they've had almost half a dozen surgeries, spent thousands of dollars on prescription pills, see a total of 19 different doctors. Each was given a different diagnosis, but what they don't have is relief from these symptoms. And that's ultimately why we're here today. So the symptoms include joint pain, eczema, psoriasis, all these symptoms we've been talking about with regard to leaky gut. So how frustrating has it been for you? What's your experience been like with all these different therapies without success? Yeah. You're verbalizing, I think, what so many folks feel. So there's a possibility that you could be suffering from leaky gut syndrome. So there's a test, and we're going to talk about it now. It's called the intestinal permeability test, and it helps to determine if anything is leaking through the intestinal wall that's not supposed to be getting through the intestinal wall. I'll show you all how it works, and then when I come back, because I've asked each of you to get this test, and when I announce those results to everybody. So this test is a pretty straightforward one. You take something, like a beaker of fluid. It's got 2 sugar molecules in it. And these are designed, again, one's a large molecule and one's a small molecule. The normal reaction is you drink this down, and these small molecules, they're going to go into your intestinal system. And see the blue ones? They quickly get absorbed. Look at the yellow ones. They don't get into the intestine. They're too large. They can't slip through the cracks. That's normal. But with leaky gut syndrome, the large molecules, these yellow ones, they begin to come through with the blue ones. And as those yellow ones come through, they get into the bloodstream, and they also show up in your urine. That's how the test works. Once you've drunk it, 6 hours later, we begin to collect the urine coming out of you, and we look at how many of the small molecules got in there and how many of the big molecules got in there. And if too many of the big ones got in there, that means you have a leaky gut. So, Dr. Chunkin asked each of you to send a sample, a urine sample, to the Genova Diagnostics to be tested. I'm going to announce your results, if that's okay. All right. Out of the 7 of you, 3 of you who had these symptoms that we gave earlier actually tested positive. That's a big number. Almost half of you tested positive. Jessica, Diana, Maria. You 3 did. Dr. Chunkin, please explain what this means to you, and I'd love to get some feedback from our guests.
So a positive test for this test called the intestinal permeability test means that substances that shouldn't get through the membrane are getting through, and in this case, they're being excreted in urine and measured. So this test is highly suggestive of a diagnosis of leaky gut syndrome.
Jessica, you want to speak for the group? I mean, what does this result mean to you?
Actually, relief. I'm just happy to finally have answers. I can make better decisions about, just have better health.
What were the symptoms you were having?
Severe stomach pain, just a lot of bloating, fatigue, tired all the time.
The thought that we could have millions of people walking around, being treated with sometimes surgeries, sometimes toxic medications, and not realize leaky gut syndrome could be causing it infuriates me. So let's walk through with Dr. Chunkin some things that might be helpful. Dr. Chunkin, you've broken it down into 3 basic steps. You argue we have to remove something, we have to replace something, and then we have to repair something. So let's go through the removal first. What do we need to avoid?
So there's some large categories of food that you should definitely think about eliminating from your diet. The first is gluten. We have some muffins and some wheat bread here. The second is dairy. The third are refined sugars, alcohol, which can be a huge toxin in the GI tract. And finally, a class of foods called nightshades: eggplant, potato, tomato, certain kinds of pepper. And then there's some medications you should definitely think about avoiding. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. These are some of the drugs that Shepard was given in addition to the methotrexate.
Let's put the brakes on for a second. Antacids. Most of you take antacids thinking, well, what's the problem? It's a pretty benign thing to do. When I begin to hear that antacids may be in some way contributing to leaky gut, now the thought of treating intestinal issues with what seems to be benign, it's a wake-up call. Okay, second R is about replacing. What are we going to replace in our diet to include?
We're replacing the good bacteria. There are a couple ways to do that. One is with pickled and fermented foods that increase the growth of